Hello everybody, and welcome to the Corporate Learning Reskill track here at Learnovation 2025. I hope you were all recharged and refreshed after that lovely lunch, and hopefully energized by some good conversations and some new connections as prescribed by Dr. Des. So this afternoon we are going to dive deep into bold ideas, cutting edge research and practical strategies that are shaping the future of workplace learning. Together we're going to explore how organisations can learn, innovate and grow in an age of constant transformation. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Michelle Thompson. I am Strategic Partnerships Manager at SkillNet Ireland. So at SkillNet we work in partnership with industry to deliver upskilling and reskilling programmes to support businesses of all sizes and all sectors in Ireland, really helping to build that talent pipeline Ireland needs for the future of work. And as we heard from all the fantastic presenters earlier today, that is ever changing. So I'm thrilled to be your host this afternoon, guiding you through a mix of research showcases, keynote insights, a fireside chat, and of course, closing predictions from the one and only Elliot Maisy. So don't forget, you can use the live captioning by scanning the QR code on the screen to help follow along with the speakers this afternoon. So let's get started. First up, we are going to transform the way we think about learning with a fast-paced research track brought to you by the Learnovate research team and special guest Ciara Garvin from WorkJuggle. We'll hear 3 quick-fire 8-minute presentations that showcase innovation and research happening right now in Learnovate, designed to make us think about how we reskill, rethink and reinvent the future of work and learning. So to lead us through this session, please welcome back to the stage Eric Pacan, the Head of Research, Innovation and Technology at Learnovate. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hello again. A lot easier this afternoon than it was this morning, I must say. And don't worry, I'm not going to get you to stand up and do anything of things. It's very safe this afternoon. As I was preparing for this morning, really excited because we're going to showcase like 3 pieces of research in this track and 3 other in the other track. And it's great that you all get a little sample. But the one I was preparing for this morning, I pulled out ChatGPT on my phone and put it in voice mode and actually gave my presentation to ChatGPT and asked it, how can I improve it? So that was quite good. But so I'm sure a lot of people have tried using ChatGPT as a coach. So today, Janet is going to talk about our latest research on personalized AI coaching. Janet?
Thank you, Eric. I'm only using this particular mic for the sympathy vote from a poor finger. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and this is going to be very much a whistle-stop tour of some of the current core research that we're engaging with at the centre. So around using AI, in particular Gen AI for coaching. And to kind of kick it off, I want to kind of set the scene for what kind of coaching we're talking about in what context. So we're not talking about mentorship. We're not talking about counselling or therapy. We're talking about this very professional or organisational type coaching. This is a definition from Nikki Turbulent, who you'll hear a little bit more about later. I won't go through it, but again, it's just to put the focus on the fact that we're looking at performance support, skills development and career development. And again, when I talk about Gen AI for coaching, this is just an example I used myself in ChatGPT. My prompt was just, I'm looking for some career coaching, and then what ChatGPT came back with. So very much that kind of conversational type approach, and kind of where we went from there. So it allowed me to kind of focus on particular areas of my career and that kind of stuff. So before I get into it, I'd like to ask everyone if you have ever used ChatGPT for coaching, not just ChatGPT, but any Gen AI, for career advice, for any kind of coaching. I don't know if we have the facility to do it within Slido at the moment, but just have a think about it maybe. And as we get to the end of the talk, maybe you might feel a little bit more differently about it. We'll see. So starting with the positives, where can AI help? So obviously one of the main things is that AI can really help with scaling a coaching experience and providing it to a lot more people. When you don't have that human element, obviously a lot more people can be reached using the AI tools and technology. which also then makes it more accessible to people who may not have, engaged with the coaching experience in the past, maybe due to financial reasons or whatever that might be. So again, AI can kind of increase that accessibility element. It can also help with personalisation. So again, if you're using something like ChatGPT, you can set your own context, and obviously it can come back with information that's very specific to you in your particular career. It also offers the opportunity for personalised feedback, which is really important, and can allow the coachee, as we call it, to kind of set goals and make plans, but also for the coach themselves, if they're using AI for their organisation, that they can kind of take away some of the heavy lifting around admin tasks. So AI can take some of that work away and allow the coach to focus on the real work of coaching. And as you can imagine, it's like having a coach in your pocket. You can ask Gen AI questions at any time, day or night, having that coach that's kind of 24/7. But also the research suggests that people actually like this cognitive empathy element of engaging with technology. So they're not necessarily feeling like they're being judged by a person, so that they feel that kind of element of objectivity when they're dealing with a piece of technology versus a person. So based on, I suppose, everything we've heard even this morning around the challenges that exist around the use of AI in general, we know there are ethical considerations, right? And in particular, when we're looking at something like coaching, where people are potentially sharing personal information, there could be ethical considerations there about how knowledge is captured and shared, and also privacy concerns. I won't go into that in too much depth because it exists across a whole spectrum of other contexts. We can also lose the human element when we're looking at, say, it's a fully AI coach situation. You can use that human element where understanding the person, understanding their motivations, understanding their personalities, all that kind of human element can be lost. And also those cultural implications can be missing from an AI perspective. So if you have a particular culture in a particular country, Gen AI may not pick up on that and might not be providing you information that's culturally significant. And then in relation to the tech side of things, you've probably all heard about AI hallucinations. So at best, you might be provided with information that might just not be completely accurate. At worst, you could be provided with information that could be detrimental to your own career development. You can make a decision based on what the AI comes back with that could actually be damaging. And then you have this jailbreaking scenario where users can circumvent some of the safeguards or guardrails that exist in the technology, and in that case can lead to really kind of dangerous outcomes. So when we did our research and we did a state of the market, we did a state of the art, we looked at the different kinds of ways that AI can help with coaching. Coaching emulation is basically where the AI, the chatbot, the Gen AI tool is completely autonomous. So like as I mentioned earlier with my example with ChatGPT, the AI coach is essentially just working on its own with no human element. The part that we're interested in is this kind of triadic approach where you've got like the coach, the coachee, and the AI helping with, as I said earlier, some of those elements that AI can be good at, as in taking some of the admin tasks, maybe helping the coach with the initial assessment of a potential coachee, and taking away some of that work. So they're working kind of together. Coach education is really where AI can help coaches to develop their own knowledge around being a coach. So we're looking at things like, teaching them about asking open-ended questions, or, active listening and that kind of stuff. And I think where AI really comes into its own, and again, this was discussed earlier on today, is around data analysis. So the chatbot or AI, Gen AI, can take a huge amount of data and process it and see what trends develop, what patterns develop. And the interesting thing is it's not just in relation to maybe one person, it can be across an organization. So the AI can actually see whether the coaching outcomes can match the KPIs of the organization, which is something that's really interesting because a lot of coaches struggle with matching their coaching outcomes with the actual KPIs of the organization, which makes it hard to sell their services kind of into a larger organization. And then briefly, who are the players in the market? So we know there's a huge amount of coaching technologies out there. So these are some of the ones we looked at in particular when we were doing our state of the market. So Coach Hub, that's Amy. It's very much an AI generated coach. It's very hard to tell whether it's human or Gen AI or AI kind of generated, which for me can be a good thing or a bad thing. Coach Vici, as I mentioned earlier, Nikki Treblanche is a big kind of hitter in this space. So he developed this coaching app, CoachBot, with the International Coaching Federation. So it's very much evidence-based, so it's a really interesting one to keep an eye on. Valence is one we looked at because they did a huge amount of scaling with Prudential, and there was a lot of data that came out of that about how they measured the outcomes. And that's why we wanted to look at that one, because it was just such a large implementation. And then the Coach Tech Academy is very much teaching coaches about how to use AI for their organization. So these are like 4 that we looked at, but we looked at a huge range of them through our State of the Market, which is available in all our research. Again, I only had 8 minutes. I'd like you to think again, if you had the opportunity now to engage with a coach, would you want it to be fully automated CoachBot? Would you want it to be fully human with no AI whatsoever? Or would that hybrid model kind of be what you'd be looking for from a coaching experience? I think I did the 8 minutes. Yep.
Thank you, Janet. And the report that Janet mentioned is actually available for members on our website. So if you're interested in hearing more about personalized AI coaching, you can go and check our website. Now we're moving away from the core research and jumping into competitive research, which we do with European partners. So the next project we're going to talk about is the European Chips Diversity Alliance, or ECDA. That's aiming at improving the talent pipeline in the semiconductor industry. And to talk about that, representing Ireland and Learnovate at the European level, Richard Harte.
Hello. So, as Eric said, my name is Richard Harte. I'm working on a project called the European Chips Diversity Alliance, and today I'll be talking about adapting microelectronics training to real-world barriers. Great. So, what even are microelectronics? Well, actually, that should say what even is microelectronics, because microelectronics is the field of designing electronics that are micro. Any questions? So you will recognize some of these kind of images. Like, so these little chipsets are in nearly everything that we use. There might be chipsets with up to 10 billion transistors or microscopic electronic components in your smartphone. So chips are the word we use for them. Microchips or just chips. They're everywhere. Your smartphone, your laptops, your headphones, your consumer appliances, advanced technology like MRIs, and significantly in most modern cars, especially electric cars. How are they made? Well, they're made in a very complex way in facilities that require a huge amount of capital investment with highly advanced technology by people that look like that guy in the bottom left in these huge clean rooms. And basically, they layer these microscopic components on top of each other using highly advanced lenses and lasers, and using a huge amount of inputs like chemicals and different machinery to do it. You will know some of these names from their presence in Ireland. Intel, Analog Electronics, and Qualcomm all to some degree make microchips. Did you know that Taiwan, China, Japan, Korea represent 80% of total global chip manufacturing? If you've ever read the book Chip Wars by Chris Miller, if you haven't, I'd highly recommend it. It explains what the problem is with this, and that's what a lot of today's presentation will be about. So, did you know, due to supply chain crises as a result of COVID-19 and geopolitical events, chip shortages cost European automotive industry €100 billion in 2023 for all of these reasons. Pandemics, wars, ships getting stuck in canals, etc. Europe accounts for just under 10% of global production. It is a specialized but small industry. And to highlight the interdependency of the industry, ASML, who are a Dutch company, actually make many of the significant machines that build these microchips, but they ship all the machines to the Far East to make the microchips, and then they ship the microchips back to us. The EU Chips Act aims to double the share of the European contribution to world production by 2030, bringing it up to 20%. Okay, well, McKinsey reports a looming semiconductor talent gap of over 100,000 engineers. So not only will there be a shortage, there already is a shortage. So if they're planning to double something that there already is a shortage of, well, that's a problem. Problems to solve. Okay, well, and I think Brenda alluded to some of this in her earlier presentation, but employee statistics provide a gloomy picture of gender balance and other diversity dimensions in the microelectronics sector, especially compared to other parallel sectors like pharmaceuticals or the biomedical industry or just the tech industry in general. The microelectronics sector is suffering a kind of a brand awareness issue. When graduates come out of college, they don't know what Intel does or analog devices do. They know a lot about what Apple and Google does, so their heads are turned towards these bigger tech companies. Poor employee experience is a problem. So there's issues with retention, culture and values, work-life balance highlighted as major factors. So you can see the semiconductor companies are lagging behind other tech companies and even other manufacturing industries like the car industry. So that's a problem. So what should we do? Well, Deloitte and some other big consultancy companies have some recommendations. So to address the attractiveness of the industry, chip makers should rethink their talent strategies and ensure the solid incorporation of DEI approaches, which are paramount to elevating employee experience. That's from 2025. Hence, the European Chips Diversity Alliance. This is a network of industry and academic institutions across Europe that are aiming to tackle this problem. We have many partners. So universities, industry partners such as Comet, Merck, and XFAB. We have Midas Ireland, who are a semiconductor representative group in Ireland. SEMI are the equivalent worldwide body. And we also have a Learnovate member, UDA.org, involved in the project. The objectives are simple. Bring together industry and education to align talent development, develop methods to gauge DEI trends, formalize a DEI advisory council, produce DEI reports and vision papers to inform industry, develop innovative training and operational tools, and develop mentorship, ambassadorship, and pioneer award programs. So the first thing we did, like we always start every project, is we do some research. We go out and talk to stakeholders in different companies, institutes, academic institutes, and get their experience. Where do they think the challenges are? From the top down to the bottom, the executives and the people on the ground in the companies. This research was carried out by UDA.org, who did a brilliant job of assessing the landscape. We used this data then to develop learner personas. Who are the people that we need to reach? The CEOs, the engineering manager, the HR manager, the guy in the fab, the lecturers in electronic engineering, and students who may or may not be already in electronic engineering. How do we turn their heads towards the industry and make it seem like a good place to work? We conduct intelligence reporting. So we use this data to develop DEI reports such that we are well equipped to deliver effective strategies. If we don't know the space that well, then how can we design learning in the space? Our DEI reports and vision papers analyze key drivers, inhibitors, and recommend concrete actions for improvement, which can be utilized by all of those stakeholders that you just saw. And we also have an advisory council. So they're a mixture of industry and academic partners that help to advise us on what direction we should take. They're the ear to the ground in terms of industry and academia. We love a good workshop in Learnovate. Wouldn't be complete without a few workshops. So we got together and put all this data into Miro to see where the learning gaps were and what kind of learning content is needed across academia and industry. We built a learning suite and operational tools. So this is actually now a live learning suite. Piloted 5 open modules which cover areas such as democratic recruitment, building inclusive hiring processes, leadership development and self-awareness, and designing inclusive learning environments, all in the context of the semiconductor industry, so with real-life scenarios that reflect what's going on in semiconductor companies. And also build 7 operational tools that help companies and academics to navigate things such as student career choices, fostering industry-academic relationships, and leadership re-engagement. And finally, engagement initiatives. There's no point in doing all this unless people know about it. So we have an ambassadorship program to recognize and empower passionate DEI advocates. We create an accessible and community-driven platform that connects members, mentors, and mentees, so a mentorship program. And we want to reward people who are good in those areas by having a Spark Excellence Award program that recognizes individuals who have made significant contributions to advance DEI in the European microelectronics industry. This is the project, so feel free to follow it on LinkedIn. It's @ECTA. You can also use that QR code. And to find out more about the project and to track our deliverables over the next 18 months, please visit the website. That's all from me.
Thanks, Richard. So that was the competitive side of our research. So we've done core, we've done competitive. What's left was the research we do with our members. So on that, we have Frank O'Reilly and Kira Garvin from WorkJuggle, who are going to do a TikTok for us.
Good afternoon. Frank O'Reilly is my name. Thank you, Eric. I'm one of the learning researchers in the Learnovate team. And this afternoon, with Kira Garvin from WorkJuggle, we're going to be talking to you about early careers learning in the age of TikTok. Yeah. So to set the scene, I'll ask Kira to give us a little bit of background to the collaborative research project that we've carried out over the last few months.
Great. So my name's Kira Garvin. I'm the founder of WorkJuggle. I'm joined here today by some of my lovely team, Mia and Aoife, and we're a training organisation, and we generally work with people in transition, so people who are career converters, returners, going up to management level, and also a lot in the early career space. And this is us at Learnovation last year. So, and now just on to the next slide, Frank, if you wouldn't mind. A few sort of things came together that made me think, and one of them was I read an article in The Atlantic, and it was all about how it's possible now to get a degree from an elite university like Yale, an English degree, without ever having read a book. Reading lists are no longer required, and I thought that was incredible and frightening at the same time. The other thing that was happening is when we were talking to our customers, they're saying, increasingly it's difficult to get people, particularly early careers, to read dense texts, really dense texts, and that can be a struggle. And I also am lucky enough to have 3 teenagers at home. And I see, they all go to iPad schools, and I see what they have coming through the system in terms of they have Kahoots, and they have Quizlets, and they have a very different way of learning than I have. And then I started thinking, well, what does that mean as they go into organizations and as they go into universities? And also I opened my own TikTok account, not to do TikToks with Frank, I'm sorry, but I opened it up the day of the Dublin riots, which I totally don't recommend either, but I kind of really enjoy it and I find it really engaging, and there is good stuff there. So with all that, we came to Learnovate and we said, look, we're wondering, what impact does TikTok have on learning? What should we be doing? And I think Frank has come up with a really, really interesting report, and I think you're going to enjoy the insights.
Thank you, Kira. So currently in the workforce, there are 4 generations. But the generation that Kira was referencing, the under 30s, are generally what's referred to as Gen Z. Those born roughly between the mid-1990s and the early 2010s. So what do we know about this cohort? Well, first of all, 2 key figures. The worldwide population of Gen Zs is approximately 2 billion. But more importantly, from a workplace perspective, by the end of 2025, 27% of the workforce will be Gen Z. So not an insignificant number within any organization. But the thing is, they get a bad rap, yeah? You don't have to conduct extensive research of the internet to find alarmist headlines talking about the end of work as we know it, thanks to Gen Z, literally in one case. But we wanted to go behind the headlines, behind the hunches and the intuitions and the suppositions and the assumptions about Gen Z, and carry out a bit of research to try and give us a better insight into how you might go about designing effective and engaging learning experiences for this generation, the kind of things that the team in Work Juggle spend a lot of time doing. So we took a mixed method approach, 3 particular strands of research we conducted. We did a bit of a review of the literature, more of a kind of a documentary analysis. We just did a trawl of reports, a few polls, some research papers, and quite a few articles. We carried out a survey of Gen Z employees, trying to get a bit of insight into what were their motivations and attitude to work and professional development, trying to understand what makes them tick, yeah? And then thirdly, we conducted a series of interviews with employers, people with a deep experience in the learning and development space, trying to deliver effective learning programs to the Gen Z cohort we're talking about. And we wanted to get an idea of what best practice might look like from their perspective. So a quick overview of some of the research. As I said, we went through a few reports. There's some interesting things, from a Deloitte report. Gen Zs like to learn, yeah? So give them an opportunity to learn and they'll seize it. A couple of other things, from LinkedIn. Feedback is a huge aspect of this generation. And they also prefer a particular style of feedback and management. A more coaching style approach is very much appreciated. Now, an interesting thing from a Harris poll, now it's only one cohort in the US, but the relationship of Gen Z to social media is a bit of a love-hate relationship, with half of them wishing the most common social media platforms were never invented. So when we talked to the employees, what did they tell us? Well, again, what they told us reconfirmed what that Deloitte report said about learning. They like to learn and will spend time learning, yeah, if you give them the right resources. But hugely important is that the time taken and the length of the learning were barriers to learning. But there's a couple of good quotes from it where the importance of learning and working alongside more experienced colleagues and building connections. So what about the employers? When we looked at the employer side, what did that tell us? Well, again, it reconfirmed what we'd learned from the employees, that a healthy work-life balance was hugely important to this generation, and aligning organizational values to the values of the Gen Z cohort was hugely important. And again, feedback and the type of feedback you give. And one interesting quote was, "Never be preachy with Gen Z," was the advice of one of the L&D professionals. Okay, so to bring that together, we distilled the research into 4 principal themes, yeah? So firstly, the primacy of purpose, yeah? You need to align your organization and how you present to Gen Z with the values that they see as important. And you need to explain the why of what you're doing and not just the what. So when you're presenting learning programs, you need to take these kind of things into account and they will be more effective. So incorporating purpose statements into your learning program. Our organization values a healthy workplace, which is why we're asking you to do the following set of learning modules. Framing learning outcomes not merely as knowledge acquisition, but as impact statements. By completing the learning program on the CRM, you will be in a better position to deal with customers and their needs, and you'll have a better chance of touching those year-end bonuses that we'd all like. And where possible, connecting the learning goals to the wider goals of this organization. we have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's why we're asking you to follow this particular program. The second thing, adapting the content for multimode delivery, keep it as short as possible. That came from the findings. And they also want control over their own learning. So what you can do, there's a number of ways of approaching that, but here's a concrete approach you can take. You've got your core content, that's your essential fundamental knowledge in the long form, yeah? Try and offer that in an alternative form, so that could be in a different media, an audio book broken into chapters of a textbook, or a transcript of a video recording, and then use short form learning resources such as 60-second videos, quizzes, infographics as complementary. So you've got your 3 levels of learning to present and offer to people looking for different ways of consuming the learning content. The third thing, feedback. And we all, in learning and development, we all know the importance of feedback as a reinforcement tool for learning. But with Gen Z, it's feedback, but not as we know it. And used correctly, it can be a key tool to support learning and embed learning within your organization. And that involves delivering feedback in frequent, short touch points, what's often referred to in research and in some of the literature as fast feedback, yeah? And repurpose your feedback as a coaching tool that can drive skills improvement, and make sure it's a conversation. So you're listening for feedback from your learners and incorporating that into your learning programs. Finally, fourth thing, the power of mentoring. Again, Gen Zs, despite being the so-called digital natives, they actually have a huge desire for relational learning and learning from others. And the importance of mentoring as a tool in this is supported across the research. But again, your mentors must understand the Gen Z mindset to effectively support learning within your organization. So what you can do, make sure if you've already got a mentoring program in place, rethink it, make sure it's fit for purpose with Gen Z. Consider more than one mentor, a mentor for technical skills and a different mentor for communications or whatever it might be. And train or retrain your mentors in the art of feedback that works with Gen Z. Okay, so I'll finish. These are your four-point action plan for developing learning programs that will be effective and engaging with Gen Z. Explain the why and not just the what. Deliver in multiple formats. Provide regular coaching style feedback and consolidate your learning with mentoring. Yeah? Oh, and the bonus to all of that is that if you pay attention to those 4 areas, you won't just improve your learning effectiveness and engagement with Gen Z, but you'll improve it across all your workforce in your organization. Thank you.
So we're not done. We're not done. Just one more. So I couldn't let this go. You would, without saying. So so this work has been hugely valuable to us in WorkJuggle. And one of the really interesting things is it has backed up work we're doing in parallel with CEDAR, Ireland Centre for AI. We're building a prototype with them, and so much of the research which has been uncovered by Learnovate really feeds into what we're building. But what we're looking for is testers. We have some customers on board who are going to test, but we'd really love as many testers and feedback as possible. So if you think you might be interested, if you could just link to the QR code, that would be brilliant, because really we want to get as much input from everyone as possible to make it as valuable as possible. And Learnovate have been a really great partner for us here in terms of getting that really good research for us. And then the other thing is just to say, myself and Frank are doing a webinar next week, and we're going to have an hour-long webinar, and we'll be sharing the report afterwards. So if you're interested in that, I think there is another QR code, and you can join us at the webinar there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.